Thank you very much. And thanks so much for organizing, Dr. Ruchi. Thank you for your leadership, not only within India Flying Labs, but really across the entire Flying Labs network. You just bring a unique vibe and way of doing things and values that we all very, very much appreciate. So it's been a real pleasure to work with you and other colleagues at India Flying Labs over the years. I am going to, at the very kind invitation of Dr. Ruchi, going to share just a bit of an overview of WeRobotics and more importantly, the Flying Labs network, and invite you all to connect with Flying Labs in your regions, as well as to consider co-creating your own Flying Labs as well. So why WeRobotics in the first place? Well, because there is a lot to be excited about in the drone industry, the innovation. I really feel like we're just on the cusp, right? We're in the drone industry where the mobile phone industry was just before the jump to the iPhone, right? We're like at that last Nokia non-smartphone, and we're about to move to what's next in the drone industry. So there's a lot to be excited about. You know, I think it's appropriate to talk about exponential growth, because that's what we saw going from the last Nokia phone to the first iPhone. And so this definitely has a potential to transform the industry, to transform our own lives for the better. And of course, that's a goal that's worth working towards. At the same time, though, I think we need to unpack some of this excitement. It's very easy to get excited about the technology, but as I think we all know, it's not just about the technology. Because who exactly is on the edge of exponential growth in the drone industry? Whose lives will actually be transformed for the better? Who will get to lead this transformation? Who gets access to the technology in the first place? Who gets to be the expert in this space? Is it the usual suspects, or is this actually going to be a lot more democratized? What we are reacting to at WeRobotics are pictures like this, where you have, for example, in this case, a major cyclone, and in the so-called global south, and then you have a bunch of foreigners flying in with the latest drone technologies, and then the role of the local communities who actually have local expertise, local knowledge, local lived experience, is basically to be passive observers, or potentially at best just holding the umbrella so that the foreign drone pilot doesn't get rained on. That is the opposite of what we want to see and the kind of world that we want to live in at WeRobotics, which is precisely why we co-founded WeRobotics, to change basically this kind of top-down, foreign-led approach to social good projects. What we prefer to see is a picture from just last week, where you have Ugandan drone pilots leading the first ever medical drone delivery project in Uganda with Johnson & Johnson. That's the kind of world we want to live in. And that's the kind of approach that we want to take, is serving as enablers to local experts and those who have local lived experience and who really are, leaders ready to change their countries for the better. So we're all about hiring smart and hiring local. It's not just about technical expertise. There is non-technical expertise that is equally, if not more important, when it comes to drones for good projects that include understanding local culture, local customs, local environment, local weather, and so on and so forth. And if you don't have that, you open yourself up for actually creating more harm than good. So how do we go about doing all this in terms of this idea of shifting power with local experts and organizations? We work with leading experts like Dr. Ruchi and others around the world to co-create Flying Labs, which are simply locally led and independent knowledge hubs that enable local experts with their local partners to combine their expertise with the opportunities that emerging technologies offer. And of course, all these Flying Labs are directly connected with each other, sharing lessons learned, best practices, challenges, opportunities, and so on. And they're all directly connected with key actors in their own government, industry, civil society, universities in each of these countries. And they're currently Flying Labs operational in 32 countries around the world. I have to update this map. And it's all demand driven, right? WeRobotics doesn't tell, for example, Dr. Ruchi, hey, you should start a Flying Labs. It's Dr. Ruchi who's heard about perhaps what's going on in Nepal Flying Labs, who then gets involved and gets in touch and explores the opportunities that India Flying Labs might be able to offer in her own country. And the way we support as enablers the Flying Labs network are through these different sector-based programs, responding to the key areas of interest. So, for example, the newest program is Youth Robotics, because not only Dr. Ruchi, but many other Flying Labs across the world over the past couple of years have been more and more excited and engaged in STEM education. And so this is one way that we can, by setting up this new program, that we can respond to this growing demand for new skill sets, new technologies, and new opportunities around STEM education. And just to give you a quick, it's not going to be exhaustive because there are literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of locally led drone projects that Flying Labs have led over the past half decade. But just to give you a flavor of what has happened in different parts of the world, Senegal Flying Labs being activated by the Senegalese Red Cross in response to some massive flooding outside of the capital city of Dakar. And the green here are actually just, it's algae floating on flooded waters. Then over in Panama, the team has been working on climate change adaptation and the need to ethically and appropriately help local communities that are at risk of sea level rise to enable them to relocate to safer ground. And so being able to have very high resolution imagery and being able to do simulations to see what kind of flooding would happen with different types of sea level rise is absolutely essential as well. Over in Côte d'Ivoire, Flying Labs, this is one of the Flying Labs that has the most experience when it comes to agriculture. They do absolutely phenomenal work, not just only in mapping for looking at crop health and so on, but also in crop spraying using drones and working directly with cocoa cooperatives. India Flying Labs, Dr. Ruchi will be much better placed to talk about some of the work that they've done around waste management and plenty of other projects. And most recently, I should note that Zambia Flying Labs then followed in the footsteps of India Flying Labs and completed very recently a really impressive waste management project in Southern Africa as well. So again, there's direct learnings, there's Flying Labs inspiring each other and collaborating directly with each other. Over in Kenya, we are involved in supporting Kenya Flying Labs because now that they've mapped the different areas of invasive species in terms of weeds, they are keen to do restoration, land restoration, and that would mean using drones to do seeding. And that's where WeRobotics serves as an enabler. We have a dedicated engineering team whose sole purpose is to be an enabler to Flying Labs and basically modify existing technology or create add-ons like seed release mechanisms that can be optimized for drone release. So that's part of the role that we play across the Flying Labs network. Over in Nepal, the team there has done sample delivery of TB samples from remote clinics to regional hospitals, all using affordable, locally owned and locally operated cargo drones. This was a 6-month project that they're looking to basically extend now. It's just a question of funding, but the expertise there is fully in Nepal. They are the very first to have done beyond visual line of sight drone deliveries in their own country. So very exciting to have Flying Labs in many countries serve as first movers and therefore creating an enabling environment for everybody else in those countries within those ecosystems. Over in Madagascar, Flying Labs, just a couple of weeks ago, in a joint project with Madagascar Flying Labs and Population Services International, the team delivered the first thousands of doses of the COVID vaccine, the Janssen COVID vaccine, to very remote communities in northern Madagascar that are not reachable by any road. It's not that there's a bad or a very difficult road to navigate in order to reach those communities. It's that roads simply don't exist. So they're completely isolated. And obviously this is an incredibly important opportunity where drones can play a vital role. This is a picture from last week, again in Uganda, where the team is working with Johnson & Johnson to do deliveries of essential medicines to remote communities across different islands. Back in Tanzania, Flying Labs, they've been actively, like many, but they've been from the start, I would say, really pushing with engaging with local youth and basically saying, listen, you know, I look like you. You too can be a drone pilot. It's not just going to be the foreigners who come in, right? So those signals are so important. And Flying Labs have a unique opportunity to serve as role models for youngsters in their own countries, both men and women. So for Dr. Ruchi in India, or Mrs. Tina, who's the director of Uganda Flying Labs, to themselves serve as role models for young girls and young women in their own countries, that they too can be the ones leading these drone projects. So I'm going to wrap up in a couple of minutes because I want to just keep it open for a number of discussions. But just to let you know that the Flying Labs are involved in such a wide range of projects and activities across different sectors that it's going to be impossible for me to give you an example with a picture of every single one of them. So I've had to resort to bullet points in here. But basically, this information is all available. Feel free to get in touch with me. We have a services document that is that's available. This is just to give you a flavor of so many other areas of expertise that Flying Labs have brought to bear in order to help, you know, other partners in their countries accelerate progress towards the sustainable development goals. So, you know, a lot more has been going on in agriculture and farming, as well as public health. For example, I didn't mention, but there's great work being done around vector-borne illnesses, right? So with dengue and malaria. Plenty of environmental projects. That picture on the left comes from India Flying Labs. You can spot Ruchi there. And again, some great work being done across multiple Flying Labs around youth projects, STEM education, and so on. Now, WeRobotics, we're a not-for-profit social impact organization. So we're not industry. We are, in that respect, we're objective, we're neutral. We're not selling any kind of technology. We don't get any commission whatsoever for promoting any kind of technology. What we have done over the years and in partnership with Flying Labs is establish formal partnerships, technology partnerships with some of the leading players in industry, in the drone industry, as well as some of the up and coming startups that are potentially going to, you know, reshape the industry, for example, like Skydio. And the purpose of these formal partnerships is to help accelerate the transfer of emerging drone technologies, hardware, software, and otherwise, to the Flying Labs based on what the Flying Labs themselves need in terms of priorities. So again, it's always demand driven. And thanks to these formal partnerships, Flying Labs do have access to these technologies, either pro bono or software platforms, either pro bono or at a significant discount. And equally important, they also have access to technical support from those very manufacturers themselves. And I can tell you just from last week, with the medical drone deliveries in Uganda, DJI was extremely responsive in providing any kind of technical support as well. And of course, that makes all the difference. We're obviously involved in helping to do knowledge exchange of technical expertise and domain expertise as needed. Increasingly, as you can see from this conference that Dr. Ruchi and team from India Flying Labs are organizing, Flying Labs themselves are training each other and sharing their own best practices and technical expertise with each other. So again, we're not an enabler. We're an enabler. We're not the gatekeeper. Flying Labs are directly connecting with each other completely independently of WeRobotics, and that is music to our ears because that's the way it should be. The vast majority of expertise does not, in terms of drone experience and technologies, does not exist within WeRobotics. It exists in the Flying Labs network itself. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of experts across 32 countries who are applying these technologies and pushing the envelope every week. Flying Labs also offer professional drone training. Some of them are offering certification training that are in line with, for example, UK CAA competency requirements. And Flying Labs also have a dedicated knowledge sharing platform where they share a growing wealth of insights, best practices, lessons learned, technical guides, software guides, mapping guides, webinars, and it's just a massive resource that continues to explode. And it's all generated by Flying Labs based on their own firsthand expertise. It is just astounding to have that kind of knowledge being codified and shared amongst key experts across Africa, Asia, Latin America, Central America, and the South Pacific. Finally, there are multiple reasons we think that folks may be interested in joining the Flying Labs Network and who have told us why they joined the Flying Labs Network. This is a two-pager that we're also more than happy to share, and it's also available on the flyinglabs.org website. Again, it's all demand-driven. You can join next week, you can join in 6 months, you can join in 2 years. And there is no, to be also clear, when Flying Labs have gotten as much as they feel they can out of being part of the Flying Labs network, they can move on. No Flying Labs is in any way, shape, or form forced to stay within the Flying Labs network. It has to add value. And as long as it adds value to local experts and local organizations, great. But the moment that it doesn't anymore, then in a way, okay, the role of the Flying Labs network has been played out, and then these organizations and experts go on to other things, right? So it really is an open, collaborative network. And so just to conclude then, we are working really hard with Flying Labs to make pictures like the one on the left obsolete, and promoting local pilots where if foreigners are involved, then they should be there as in the background and in terms of enabling. This is just me completely sunburnt, holding up a hotspot so that the team can be doing long-range deliveries to remote communities so that they can get access to their HIV medicines. So that is what we're all about. All of these beautiful people you see on this picture are not actors or models, even though they could be. They are key leaders of Flying Labs across the network and across the world. So this is the kind of the world that we want to be in, one that is diverse, that is rich, and that is entirely locally led. So thank you very much, Dr. Rucci, and looking forward to any questions that may come up. Thanks again.
Hi, Dr. Patrick, can I speak?
Yes,
please.
Yeah, as someone who's studying the drone industry as a private investor, can you kindly throw light on what is the potential scope and scale of this industry? Because it impacts multiple industries, and you very beautifully portrayed how you're helping society through drone development in social sector. But of course, it has huge applications in defense, commercial, and so on. But if you have a top-down view of how this, how this industry will shape in the next 10 decades, that would be helpful. Thank you.
That's a great question. Thank you very much for asking it. I wish I had the crystal ball and I could foresee where we go next. One of our main concerns is that with the acceleration around emerging technologies, exponential technologies, is that this drives more inequity between the haves and the have-nots, which is why we founded WeRobotics in the first place. But I think the way that I might be able to best answer the question, and I'm sure others here should also definitely weigh in. The way that we see this in terms of the big picture is that it's not just about drones. If we're looking at the big picture, what's really happening at a societal and industry planetary level is that we are shifting, a radical shift from manually controlled technologies to increasingly intelligent and autonomous systems, right? And that's going to be for better or worse, that's going to be a one-way road. We're not going to go back to, being more, at least not out of choice, to being more manual. Just like now, you're not going to travel between, Paris and I don't know, and Barcelona on horseback, right? There are cars, there are, trains, and so on. So the big deal is not so much that these platforms, fly and collect data and are important for critical supply chain logistics and so many other applications. It's the fact that these technologies can be made to be, more autonomous with every passing year. So whether these platforms fly, drive, or swim is actually not the big deal. It's the fact that they can be made to do so with greater autonomy than ever before. That is where you're going to get the radical gains in efficiency that we're seeing in other parts of the private sector with warehouse robotics, right? In terms of the billions of dollars that Amazon and others are saving because of the shift to robotics, because of this significant increase in efficiencies and so on. And what we want to be able to do is bring that to the social good space, because goodness knows that, you know, the clock is ticking in terms of the different types of massive challenges and planetary level crises that we're facing. So we need that speed, we need that kind of smart technology. But just to be clear, that alone will not fix the problem, because if we're just going with technology and that's just going to drive more inequity and inequality, social, economic, and so on, then we're just making ourselves more vulnerable to future crises. What we need to be able to do is have these technologies being used far more inclusively. So anyway, I'll pause there just to say that for me, the big picture is think beyond drones. Think about intelligent autonomous systems and how that's going to completely reshape society. And what we can do, whether it's as investors, humanitarians, universities, or otherwise, to ensure that what this revolution does is also create a revolution in shared prosperity, so that everyone has access to the technologies, everyone has access to the opportunities, and so on. Thank you very much. That's a great question.
Thank you.
David?
Thanks so very much. Dr. Meier, as usual, brilliant and exemplary work done across the globe. My question is about how can WeRobotics and the Flying Labs ensure that they keep a place in the use cases. As just mentioned, there's a lot of investment in big business, very large companies see the benefits of drone use and are very strong influences on the standards development and regulatory panels, and ensuring that their product is the one that will end up providing the services of the future. And they are all experts, I'm not taking that away from them, but I just wonder if that removes opportunities for such excellent work as done, particularly for development by WeRobotics, etc. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for asking. Let me know if I didn't get the full question, David. And since we've known each other for what, 6-7 years, I think you can drop the doctor. I'm not a big titles person. It's just Patrick.
Thank you.
And thank you for your contribution to this space as well, David. I know you've been extremely involved across so many areas that are absolutely vital, from regulations and so on. You know, I think if I understand correctly, I think you know, you have big players in terms of the manufacturers and so on, and the software developers, and you know, what we're trying to do in a very small kind of way is seeing how, especially for cargo drones, I mean, the mapping drone space is you know, has been around for a lot longer than the cargo drone delivery space. And what we're trying to do with the drone delivery space is to make sure that it's not just always the usual suspects from, you know, the cargo drone companies from Europe or Australia or the US that basically get a first mover advantage to basically be the ones who get the contracts and so on. It's not an either or, don't get me wrong. I want to be very clear that I'm, you know, like you've seen, we work with lots of international companies, but one of the things we want to do now, especially around drone delivery, is work with local cargo drone companies. So what we've done over the past year, and this is something we're going to be dialing up in 2022, is we've facilitated a working group of experts from locally owned cargo drone companies in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. And we're bringing them together in this working group to basically share best practices, lessons learned, opportunities, so that they can pool their you know, experience together. And the next step, this is not public per se yet, but is to establish a trade association so that the interests and the expertise and of local cargo drone companies are made more visible to the big donors and the big organizations, the big multilateral organizations, the big international organizations, because there is a bit of a disconnect. You know, we're here saying, promoting, oh, development, sustainable development, blah blah blah, locally led, but then the vast majority of these technologies tend to come from, you know, China, Europe, US. UK, Australia, and that needs to be reshaped as well. Again, it's not an either or, but the playing field has to be balanced out a bit. I hope I understood your question. If not, let me know, and I'm happy to take it offline, David. And I'm happy to brainstorm together.
No, that was excellent. Thank you very much, Patrick.
There's another question in the chat.
Yeah.
which asks like, what type of technology are you using in your drones? Is it a mix of AI and ML with CV?
AI and so on. So I've been more involved in the cargo drone space over the past few years. I started out in terms of the mapping and the AI, but that question is better asked to my colleagues Kaya and Joseph. I know that Flying Labs and WeRobotics have experimented with different types of automated solutions for automated feature detection using AI and some machine learning, right? So you create training data around features of interest in your imagery, and then you basically run it with through the rest of your imagery. So that's an area that I know Flying Labs and WeRobotics have been involved in basically running these kind of competitions, open competitions for open AI competitions to develop features of interest for automated detection. It's not an area that I've been as much involved in over the past couple of years, and of course within the AI ML space, things are also exploding that way. So I don't have the latest insights, but a group that I would refer you to Dr. Ruchi. I would also refer you to others like the director of Tanzania Flying Labs in Dar es Salaam, Leka, also Tiam from Senegal Flying Labs. I know for a nature conservation project, they were doing bird counting. And if I remember correctly, they were using automated solutions there to do this feature detection. So sorry that I'm not as much knowledgeable there, but I invite you to get in touch with us at humans@werobotics.org, and then we can route your question to the person who has the answers.
Thank you, sir, for your answer. Another question can be like, as the name Flying Lab suggests, like it is having flying in the name. Few people may have the ambiguity that are they only restricted to drones, or they can work with other technologies for good, and maybe they can use some other solution they have, and that is not a drone.
That's an excellent question, and yes, we started out in Nepal. That's where the first Flying Labs was launched in 2015. And that name has really stuck. Folks really love the idea of a lab that flies. It captures the imagination. It's different, and so on. At the same time, as far as WeRobotics is concerned, we didn't choose the name We Drones, for example, because going back to the excellent first question that was posed, it's about this radical shift towards increasingly intelligent and autonomous systems, and so we, from the start on the WeRobotics side, have been interested in autonomous systems across the board, whether they fly, drive, or swim. And to answer your question, Fiji Flying Labs already years ago was the first mover in the Flying Labs network in using underwater drones or marine robotics. Panama Flying Labs has been using surface water robotics, using a prototype to see if they can deliver medicines by autonomous cargo boat. As well. I know that Cameroon Flying Labs in West Africa is extremely interested and has been dabbling into terrestrial robotics and ground robotics. I've had conversations with Uganda Flying Labs and Morocco Flying Labs and others around farm robotics. So the use of ground robotics to help in terms of farming, weeding, planting, and what have you. So what I can tell you is that there's growing interest because I'm getting emails and Slack messages from a number of Flying Labs colleagues saying, okay, what about ground robotics? How can we use this for farming? Or what about marine robotics? And Tanzania Flying Labs most recently has done some outstanding work using marine robotics as well for marine life monitoring and ecosystems monitoring and so on. So I think a good number and a growing number of Flying Labs are very much keen to venture beyond the flying, not to drop the flying. That is going to continue being core for probably all Flying Labs for many, many years. But the idea is that Flying Labs now see an opportunity based on the expertise that they've developed and the experience that they've developed with robotic solutions to capitalize on that expertise and to start offering other types of services to drive positive social impact. And I can tell you, for example, we're talking to a marine robot platform company in Asia that does a cleanup of garbage and waste in lakes and bays and so on. And they've built their platform with Pixhawk and other types of components that are very much core to drone technology. And so that's very exciting for Flying Labs, that they already know a lot about these software platforms and mission planning, that they can then apply that to ground robotics. And one more recent conversation, which I was surprised, is there's interest to explore legged robotics and seeing what applications that might have. That comes from the Flying Labs, not from WeRobotics. Anyway, so yes, the idea is really, the name is Flying Labs, just like iTunes, 10 years ago was only music, but obviously it's a lot more today. Flying Labs are going beyond the flying.
So if it's okay, Dr. David, I'd like to know, are you trying to create some kind of a platform here? They are trying to create a platform on which multiple applications and use cases and devices or drones can be used for different cases.
Thanks for the question. Let me know if I didn't understand. I think what we're not looking necessarily for is like a one size fits all, like one platform that will be aerial, terrestrial, and marine. The ground robotics space and the marine robotics space, in some respects, have been around longer than the drone space, but from a consumer commercial perspective, the technology has been until recently still quite expensive and so on. But we're starting to see some changes there. So the idea is not to say, one platform that does everything. You're going to have different platforms that are going to be particularly good at certain things. And so for marine robotics, there are a range of platforms that Flying Labs have used. Also Peru Flying Labs, Fiji Flying Labs, like I mentioned, and Tanzania Flying Labs. But so yeah, I don't know if I understood correctly. Then I think the answer is no. The idea is look at what industry is offering, and also see where we can incentivize industry. So we've had numerous conversations with some of the big players in farm robotics in Europe, and saying, folks, like, okay, sure, you're focused on the European market, but there's an opportunity here for you to partner with African universities, for example, and African entrepreneurs to come up with a platform that is optimized to be used in African environments, in terms of topography, weather, soil conditions, and what have you. So we're trying to help create shared prosperity there, because we know that these big companies can't do it alone. And so can this be set up as a partnership where local jobs are created, local businesses are created, and these businesses can then turn around and offer this as a service themselves. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions, or am I out of time?
No, you're not out of time. Amit, can you read some of the questions which were discussed in the chat?
Yeah, there's another question by Shivam. How are people funding this for learning? So maybe they are asking about how people are funding Flying Labs, or maybe a concept for learning. So if you can answer the question.
I think all the Flying Labs who may be on this fantastic conference are better placed. But basically, when organizations like WeRobotics in India join the Flying Labs network with other partners and so on, those organizations already offer services in the robotics or the drone space or related spaces. They already have partners and clients and so revenue streams, right? So when Flying Labs join, they already have certain level of sustainability when they join the network. And then part of our main role at WeRobotics is to then drive more opportunities, drive more clients, drive more resources, drive more partnerships, and grant opportunities to Flying Labs as well. Again, based on different demands and so on that we're hearing. For example, maybe it might be from the UN or the World Bank, or it might be from an intergovernmental network or organization, a regional organization like in East Africa. That's part of the work that we strive to do is what we call opportunity transfer, right? Is to transfer opportunities in the drone space, in particular in the drones for good space, that typically go to experts in Australia, Europe, and the US, and reroute them to experts across Flying Labs and beyond. And when Flying Labs are perhaps, maybe there's a particular opportunity that we come to them with a new donor or a new organization, and if this is not of interest to them, or if they currently don't have the bandwidth or what, or there's, it's not a good fit, then what we'll do is I look to identify other drone experts in that particular country. They don't all necessarily have to be connected to the Flying Labs, right? At the end of the day, what we're looking to do is create with Flying Labs, create enabling environments for all these drone ecosystems in different countries around the world, right? And the more we can create these enabling environments, the more everybody gets more opportunities, and there's more expertise and capacity in country, which enables, then local experts to continue taking the lead in these drone projects, rather than having an Australian company fly over or a British company fly over to run the show. That's why it's so important for us is, to support the broader ecosystem as well as best we can. And obviously entirely through partnerships. We can't do this on our own.
Patrick, would you like to highlight about how do we measure impact in short? Like, why is it so important for us to know what impact we are creating? And, we are also talking about a Ripples project. So if I am able to work with 10 experts, then how can those 10 experts carry on the work that we are trying to do into hundreds and thousands more? So how exactly are we really measuring the impact? We all say that we are all here for impact, for doing something good. So what is a good factor, and how do we really measure it? Is it really credible? How do we bring the credibility and responsibility to the network?
Those are great questions, and I also something that I think you, Ruchi, will be even better placed to answer. But I can point everyone to flyinglabs.org/impact. And there you'll see the kind of metrics and data, monitoring and evaluation kind of data that are being collected in order to really demonstrate the power of local expertise and locally led projects in terms of social impact. That, of course, then is important for donors, because WeRobotics is a not-for-profit, so we're funded out of grants. And to be able to demonstrate impact is absolutely essential, not just for donors, but for Flying Labs and WeRobotics as well, to know, how do we further optimize the impact if we're not actually monitoring or collecting any data on these impact metrics, and how do we even improve? And so that's a really key component of it. And then a complementary approach that has been developed with Flying Labs over the past year and a half or so, is the global Flying Labs model that you will also find described at flyinglabs.org. And that's been co-created by Flying Labs to basically identify, priorities and basically as a way to kind of self-evaluate, for Flying Labs to self-evaluate on their progress with respect to their own priorities. And what's beautiful about this approach, because it's been co-created, and by the way, we didn't come up with the idea of a global model. We weren't even thinking along those lines. It was a few years back when Flying Labs were saying, well, we need something else in order to basically create a roadmap towards a success for our Flying Labs. And that's when we then started working with a number of Flying Labs over the course of half a year to co-create this global model. And one of the things I particularly like about this global model is that obviously different Flying Labs will have different strengths across different areas, right? And so when a Flying Lab says, you know what, for 2022, we really want to shift gears and develop more expertise in these 2 or 3 areas. What they can do then is use the global model and find out which of the other 30 plus Flying Labs already has expertise in these 2 or 3 areas. And then they work directly together, right? And so there's that mentorship and collaboration that happens between Flying Labs. That the best we can do at WeRobotics is facilitate and enable that. But of course, we're not the ones with that expertise, right? I'm sitting in Switzerland. I'm not, running projects in Uganda. And so that's a really important part in terms of evaluation, progress, success, and so on. And you'll find all that on the flyinglabs.org website. Dr. Ruchi, is there anything you want to add to that? Because you're running your own Flying Labs with your colleagues, so you have firsthand insights that I don't have.
Yes, Patrick. So another question, I'll also address another question which somebody had asked in the chat is about, do we have a Flying Labs in one of the towns of India? So India, it's particularly important for us that we go hyper-local. It's not just local. We have to go really hyper-local because India is so diverse and there are so many languages and states and cultures that we really need to be extra penetrating. So when we talk about having a flying labs in a place like Vizag, we are looking for partners, and we already have some partners on board. And in the next year of operation, we would be going into formal partnerships with the universities or with the local experts, and making these multi-centered teams, which would have one drone team, a university, and at least one NGO, which can then keep on expanding themselves. So we have done that at the central level, at the India Flying Labs level. We want to do that at every micro level as well. And this would really help us to scale up whatever we are trying to do into many more pockets. We can have live workshops. Right now we're having it online, but like you would be having more hands-on workshops across the country. That's the idea. And then every pocket where we work, we want to be working with hundreds of students and youngsters and trying to just keep on expanding our knowledge network that way. And talking about measuring the impact and about the kind of ripples we are creating, this is a real challenge for us. But yeah, once we have a formal setting like that, we would be able to do that much better.
In addition, I have a question. Do you also work with the government of India and the local governments to strengthen their view of drones in development and in social segment? Because till very recently, the government was skeptical to open up drone manufacturing and stuff to private industry. But seeing what are, we live in a not so peaceful, neighborhood where, terrorists from across the border send, these low-cost drones and upset our security. And then the Indian government opened it up to manufacturing. But are you also lending your view to the multiple use cases of drones for development? See, it's very important. Largely well-known, use cases are for defense and commercial, but the social segment which you have highlighted today is quite staggering, and you lending your view to the government will help them look at this perspective.
Yes, Vivek. So over the last 3-4 years, this is something that we have actively done. We have been on almost every panel discussion which the government hosts, and we have shared our views, and we've been very, very bullish about the good use of drones, so that the fear or the suspicion which exists with these technologies is completely taken away. And common man, the farmers, the families are able to trust this technology better, so that tomorrow when we fly the drone, let's say for a Swamitra scheme, wherein we are trying to map the villages for the land parcels, it becomes very easy for us to talk to the locals. And as Flying Labs, we have something called community engagement module. And this is like really, really important for us. Even if we work with villages, we want to ensure that we have spoken to them before, we have explained them what the technology is, what kind of data we are collecting, how are we going to ethically use the data, and how are we going to destroy it, or how are we going to share it in the future. So this is like extremely important for us. And wherever we work, whatever we talk, this is a very, very important perspective that we try to bring into discussions, be it COVID-19 drones, be it the drones for land mapping, it would be drones for conservation or forest or anything. This particular angle always remains that how do you really use drones ethically, responsibly, and safely? And we have always shared our views in forums like the ones organized by DFI or FICCI or World Economic Forum, and they have always appreciated of what we brought on the table.
Thank you.
There's another question for both of you, Dr. Patrick and Dr. Ruchi. So let's say someone has a project or an idea or a concept which is for social good, and they want to connect to Flying Labs or WeRobotics for getting it implemented, or let's say have a trial or a run of it. How can they connect to you?
Ruchi, do you want to take that first?
In India, you can contact me. We are most open to working with almost every manufacturer, service provider, knowledge expert in our country, and we have already grown our network to more than 50 organizations, and we have thousands of experts already with us. We are very happy in let's say even being too bold and outburst about it. But yeah, you're most welcome to join what we do. Just contact us, and we are very happy to work with you. It could be something focused that we do, like a particular workshop or a training program, or it could be a project that can go on for a few months, and we can do it collaboratively. We can look for grant funding together. There is a lot that we can do, and we really believe in the idea of collaborating, in crowdsourcing, in being open and inclusive in whatever we do. The platform that you're working on right now is called Drones in Development. It was also built with the same spirit that everyone can contribute. Everyone has something special to share. Everyone has a case study that they have really worked on, and someone can learn from that case study. So this is what the entire Flying Labs is built on, and we are very happy as India Flying Labs to take it forward and scale it up to as much as possible. And we're also trying to create systems in which one Flying Labs can work with another Flying Lab. So within India Flying Labs, all the experts that we have, we are trying to create a system wherein you can work, let's say, with Uganda Flying Lab, you can work with Fiji Flying Labs, you can work with another Flying Labs. So we are creating those channels for you all to interact with each other. So that opens up your opportunities to, if you have something nice to share with the world is open for you.
Very well put. I don't think anything to add. You'll, yeah, folks are more than welcome to contact us. Everything's on our the WeRobotics.org website. You'll and you know, we tend to reply very quickly, so your email will be responded. It won't just go down a black hole.
So Amit, if is there any more question coming in from the audience? Amit, Rishi?
Presently, there are no active questions there.
All right. So Patrick, we have shared your email address on the website, and everyone, you please feel encouraged to talk to Patrick, to write to him, to connect with him on LinkedIn, and I'm sure that he'll be very happy to get your engagement even beyond this conference. That's the idea. Conference is just a platform for you all to meet, and there's only so much we can do in the span of 2 days. Let's use this opportunity to get to know each other and then even further interact with each other. Thank you so much, Patrick, for being a part of our conference. This is the first international conference on drones and development, but I'm sure this is not the last. We're going to have many more every year, hopefully, for as long as we are in this business. Thank you so much for being a part of this.
Thank you so much, Rishi. Thanks for the invitation, and thank you both as well, Amit, for organizing. Always a pleasure, and wishing you all the very best for the rest of the 2 days.
Thank you, Patrick.